all those relationships right now?
I think that we have to draw a separating line between the ruling regime and the people. I believe that the people is quite opposed for what is taking place in the Gaza Strip, but actually the regimes are those who have the final word here, and I totally agree that the Gulf regimes would not sacrifice this military operation and not risk their connection and relations with the US, actually.
It's very interesting because politically, obviously, on the back burner while all of this is unfolding, there were talks of coalition negotiations, what that was going to mean for an Israeli government down the line. Talk to us about your assessment of how Israeli leaders are seemingly unified when it comes to a security threat. Clearly not unified on forming a coalition right now, but when it comes to the safety of people in this country, they seem to be singing from the same page.
Yes, because if they will be perceived by the public in Israel as the ones that are not standing for being together, they're going to pay a very political heavy price. That's the major reason to that phenomenon.
Thank you so much for your insight. Avi Melamed, founder and CEO of Inside the Middle East Intelligence and a geopolitical analyst, and Dr. Arik Rudnitsky, researcher at the Arab-Jewish Relations Program at the Israel Democracy Institute and project manager at the Moshe Dayan Center in Tel Aviv University. We appreciate your insight and your time on this day. Right now, new developments on Tuesday, clashes breaking out earlier between Palestinian protesters and Israeli security forces in the West Bank town of Bethlehem. During that general strike, the health ministry in the West Bank saying one protester has been killed in those clashes. Those reports are yet to be confirmed. That solidarity strike is being supported in several centers, including East Jerusalem and the West Bank, with posts on social media bearing a Palestinian flag urging solidarity, quote, from the sea to the river. So let's check in with our correspondent Pierre Kloschendler. He joins us live from Jaffa. What are you seeing there? What kind of support has there been there for the solidarity strike in Jaffa?
There's been the crowd forcefully, and yet the tension in Jaffa is still palpable. You can see that shops are closed. There is an unprecedented compliance with the call for general strike that has been taking place from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River, that is inside Israeli Arab towns and villages, but also in East Jerusalem, in the Old City, and in the West Bank. Something unprecedented, except maybe in hospitals, where, you know, hospitals in Israel have been somehow a haven of coexistence, and it is so today as well, because most medical personnel from Arab towns have come to hospital to treat patients, to save lives, and that's still going on, which is maybe a light in a gloomy situation. Here behind me you see a police roadblock. There are police roadblocks around the neighborhood of Jaffa at the entrances and the exits of the neighborhood in order to quell any show of violence if something like that would happen in the course of the day and the night.
And such an interesting anecdote, Pierre, that protesters were shown where shelters were in the event that sirens would sound at the time that the demonstrations were underway in Jaffa. Thank you so much, correspondent Pierre Kloschendler, live from the city of Jaffa. More to come from Pierre in the coming hours. Right now, a very short break. Our breaking news coverage continues with more live updates from our team of field reporters in Ashkelon, Jaffa, the Israel-Gaza border, and several other centers across the region. Plus, we have more security experts in studio to break down all the latest developments. This is I24 News Breaking News Edition. Back in a bit. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
Today we're making a stir fry from nopal cactus, which is a cactus that is originally from Mexico. We'll be cooking that up with some greens from the forest and some veggies that we grew from a local organic farm. In Shdemama Food Forest. A food forest is actually a method of agroforestry that's a very ancient method of agriculture. So it's combining agriculture and forestry. You know, our ancestors way back, we grew the plants that were our food, our medicine, our herbs within a forest ecosystem. And so now we are recreating a similar model. This is not the only food forest in Israel. There's actually many of them. The movement is growing, and we at Reforest are designing and implementing food forests throughout the country. This food forest here has been a work in progress for the last 6 or 7 years. There's parts of it that are more about the experience of coming and harvesting and being able to take a little bit from each plant or each tree and learn. And there's sections of this forest that are a little bit more production oriented. The difference in our eating habits is much more focused on growing and eating what is seasonal and what we can harvest from what comes naturally wild, because it's actually much healthier. None of this land is something that we use chemicals on. The benefit of growing your own food, whether it's in a food forest or a backyard garden, is that the diversity of foods that you eat and that your family eats is suddenly much, much greater than what you'd be able to eat from a local supermarket.
Discover i24 News Radio. Now you can listen to i24 News anywhere, anytime, for free. i24 News Radio is the audio live stream of the television network with world headlines every 30 minutes starting from 7 a.m. Tune in for top news, magazines editions while in the car, in your office. Join us from your smartphone, tablet, or desktop to stay connected in the Middle East and around the world. Don't wait any longer. Head to our website or mobile application and click on i24 News Radio to subscribe.
Breaking news coverage continues. I'm Benita Levine in Tel Aviv. And with Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad sending more than 3,500 rockets into Israel from the Gaza Strip in the past 9 days, the latest rocket barrage from the Strip today killing 2 foreign workers from Thailand inside Israeli communities and injuring 7. And take a look at this footage earlier on Tuesday, a rocket hitting a building in the southern city of Ashdod. Israel is continuing with intense strikes on terror targets. It's also eliminated several high-profile commanders. There are growing international calls for a ceasefire to be implemented, including a plea from U.S. President Joe Biden. But the Israeli Defense Force says its precision campaign will continue. Sirens sounding in Israel's southern communities throughout the afternoon on Tuesday. About 100 rockets were launched from Gaza overnight. Many analysts predicting the Palestinian rocket fire and Israeli airstrikes could continue for another few days. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying a short while ago, quote, "The day after will be a different equation." Now, earlier he toured the south and reiterated that Israel will continue to defend its citizens.
I was briefed on our many attacks against Hamas and Islamic Jihad. They were hit in ways they did not expect. I have no doubt we put them back by many years. I conduct situational assessments and we make decisions. We will continue to operate as necessary in order to restore peace to all Israeli citizens. I'm sure that all of our enemies can see the price that is paid for aggression against us, and I'm sure they'll also learn the lesson.
So for more insight, we now welcome to studio Colonel in the Reserves Reuven Ben Shalom, an associate at the International Institute for Counterterrorism. Reuven, thank you so much for being here in studio today. We just heard Benjamin Netanyahu's assessment of the situation. I'd like your thoughts on the fact that it's 9 days in, and just moments ago we were reporting on sirens sounding still in southern communities, on the operation by the Israeli Defense Force continuing, and the fact that tensions are escalating in certain cities, in different centers, Arab Israeli cities. Talk to us about your thoughts on what the situation is like on the ground right now.
Well, 9 days for an operation like this may seem a lot, may seem only a few days relative to previous campaigns. I think the goal of the IDF now is to shorten the extent of the operation, not bring it to 30 or 50 days like previous campaigns. I think there's a serious problem with perception worldwide and even inside Israel as far, for instance, as the goals of the operation. The Prime Minister just said to restore peace. Let's us remember that there is no peace. The word peace is irrelevant here. Maybe we mean quiet, because we always have these lulls of quiet between campaigns. I think the goal now is to take away so many capabilities from Hamas that they will think twice before launching such another barrage of rockets. That's what triggered this whole operation. Remember, the IDF did not launch it, Hamas did. The expectation now is that the blow will be so severe that they will wait for a long time and not make such another miscalculation again. It's hard to tell. I see even military analysts that are not sure at the scope of the damage. My personal assessment is that the great damage has been done, and it seems to me that the IDF is working in a different way in the past. It's not only delivering blows, but it's carrying out a systematic plan of negating, taking away, eliminating strategic capabilities of Hamas one by one, and they're not even done yet.
Certainly, it's been made very clear this could continue for at least a few days. Reuven, stay with us, because right now we're just going to check in with the latest developments on the Israel-Gaza border. Let's cross live to our Sarah Coates. And Sarah, we know, of course, rocket sirens sounding in recent hours there. What's the latest on the ground? What are you seeing at the moment?
Benita, they sounded literally a minute ago, just before we came on air with you. One of these sirens rang out. We raced to a shelter, which is thankfully right beside us. And when we emerged, we saw the interceptions in the sky, these white clouds that look like pretty nice clouds, but in fact, they are interception clouds. So it is still continuing here. Rockets continue to be sent over from the Gaza Strip. Already during this conflict, we've seen at least 3,500 rockets coming over from the Strip into Israeli territory. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he met with the leaders of the Eshkol Regional Council a little earlier today, telling these people that Israel has set Hamas back by years with these strikes that are continuing there in the Gaza Strip. Just a little earlier today, Benita, we saw Israel absolutely pounding the Strip, taking out at least 15 more kilometres of this underground tunnel system there known as the Metro. And so far we do understand that Israel has come out to say that more than 100 Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad fighters have been killed, Benita.
Sarah Coates live from the Israel-Gaza border. More to come from Sarah in the coming hours. Thank you so much. Still with me in studio, Colonel in the Reserves, Reuven Ben Shalom. So as we just heard there, the strikes from Israel are continuing. Talk to us about the intelligence in the build-up to this escalation right now. It's very clear that there are very precise hits taking place. We know apartments from certain top commanders were hit just in the last hour or so. Talk to us about the work in the build-up to what we are seeing at the moment.
Remember that many years ago we would not discuss intelligence. The whole idea of the ability of the Israeli intelligence to penetrate the enemy structures was something we didn't discuss. It's like we didn't want them to understand how much they are penetrated, as if they find out, they can expose it. Things have changed. I can talk about it because my prime minister talks about it. And we see on the ground that something like this happens only after working for years and years, building what the IDF calls the target bank, that has thousands of targets. And remember, the IDF doesn't go around toppling buildings for nothing. Each and every bomb has a target, has an address that is a military target that also, of course, has to be legal according to international military law. So building these cases file by file is a very difficult process, especially when it comes to real-time intelligence, because it's not only knowing where the home of an operative is, but also knowing what operative has a bunker in his basement. I think we've seen recently these apartment buildings being toppled, or residential homes. We don't just go taking down residential homes. We do it if it's a military target. So also that, knowing everything and knowing in real time, is he home? We want everyone to leave. Remember, we'll wait a long time till everyone leaves because we don't want to kill his family, his children. That's also an important part of this operation. So I would say even the heroes of this operation, from my perspective, from a professional perspective, is the intelligence, the ability of the intelligence, and the capabilities Israel has today with all, of course, the package with cyber operations and all the aspects of intelligence. Quite remarkable, really incredible as far as what it enables the trigger pullers to do. When you drop a bomb, ultimately that's the end of a really difficult process.
I want to unpack a little bit further the issue of the ethics and morals around what we are seeing. But right now, we're going to go live to Ashkelon in southern Israel, and we're joined by our defense correspondent, Daniel Tzemach. And Daniel, we know, of course, sirens have been sounding throughout the afternoon in certain southern communities. What's happening where you are at the moment?
Right, so it's relatively quiet here in Ashkelon and also nearby Ashdod, but there has been activity in the city of Sderot, very close, really the closest large city to the Israel-Gaza border, aside from where we're currently standing. What appears to be a barrage of sorts towards Sderot and the surrounding area. We also understand, according to sources on the ground in the vicinity, that there were interceptions over the city. Sderot, of course, has bore the brunt of the rocket fire from Gaza in general in recent years. In this latest round, there have been several different cities that have been struck as a result of projectile fire. But again, we're seeing that activity in Sderot, in the nearby communities adjacent to the Israel-Gaza border. And we have seen the continuation of the Israeli Air Force's activity, even over our heads specifically, Benita. We saw them heading towards the Gaza Strip, and it appears as though we also saw them heading back. And in between that time, we also saw the Israeli army announcing a new round of strikes targeting those apartment buildings, or really apartments, individual apartments of Hamas commanders, where those apartments were also used for operational activities for Hamas's military wing. So the IDF is still continuing with its activities, and Hamas and the militant factions within the Gaza Strip certainly are still launching rockets towards Israel.
And you are looking at live images on your screen out of Gaza City right now. Thank you so much, defense correspondent Daniel Tzemach, updating us live from Ashkelon in southern Israel. More to come from Daniel in the coming hours. Right now, a very short break. Our breaking news coverage continues in just 2 minutes. Stay tuned. This is I-24 News, Breaking News Edition.
Organism that pulsates through millennia. Touch it, listen to it, smell it, taste it. Experience the Holy Land like never before. Holy Land Uncovered, Every Sunday, only on i24 News.
We're on the inside of political and religious passions in Jerusalem, breaking down the financial trends shaping the global economy, giving you key context, not just headlines, with the stories from Israel that touch the U.S. and those across the region with impact far beyond its borders. Catch the rundown where the Middle East meets the world.
Traeger, the original wood pellet grill. Set it and forget it. Traeger makes wood-fired cooking simple. Epic flavor, endless possibilities. Grill, smoke, bake, roast, braise, and barbecue. Wood doesn't just fuel the fire, it's the secret ingredient. All-natural hardwood pellets add incredible flavor. Perfect results every time. Welcome to the Traeger Hood.
Breaking news coverage continues. I'm Benicia Levine in Tel Aviv. Now, Hamas has fired more than 3,000 rockets at Israel over the past week, and the Iron Dome interceptor has knocked 90% of rockets aimed at cities out of the sky. So how does this marvel of engineering actually work? Our science and technology correspondent, Ariel Levin-Waldman, asked the man responsible for deploying it in the first place. Let's take a look.
You can actually see, still in the air, the smoke and the contrails from the rockets that were fired from Gaza and intercepted by the Iron Dome just moments ago. How does a system like this work? Well, just 100 feet behind me, you can see one of the launchers from one of the world's most advanced missile interception systems. This is the Iron Dome, a series of launchers, each one holding 20 rockets made to intercept short-range projectiles. Now, one of these launchers obviously would not be enough to protect a city, which is why a battery is actually a series of these launchers linked to two very important things. One is a radar system. The radar determines where a rocket is going to fall, and obviously when it's been launched, and a command center which determines, is that rocket worth intercepting? Because each battery has a finite amount of ammo, it can't intercept everything. Not all the rockets are worth intercepting in the first place. Some are going to fall in an empty field. Don't fire on that one. But the people in the command center have 10 seconds to determine, is it worth firing on? And if it's aimed at the city, they have to make that call. And so far, those calls have been very accurate. Over the course of the past week worth of the conflict, roughly 90% of rockets that have been aimed at cities have been intercepted by the Iron Dome. A very impressive record. We spoke to the person responsible for the rollout of the Iron Dome system in Israel to see what his experiences have been with it.
The way of fighting rockets and toward Israel, it's part of a doctrine, of a large doctrine, which have its defense part of it, active and passive, attack capabilities against those launchers and against those capabilities that the Hamas had, alert in order that we would have enough alert to the Israeli population, and hopefully deterrence. And this is one of the goals of what is happening now, and we hope that the Hamas will understand that he made a big mistake a few days ago when they shot some rockets toward Jerusalem, and they would be deterred. It's a combination of our manpower. It is not automatically, it is being done by the soldiers themselves. They have a short time to react. This is a matter of professionalism, military professionalism, and the system itself. We do everything in order not to be surprised. We were not surprised this time from the Hamas, although they tried, as you said, all kind of ideas that they had, but we were ready for it, and this is what we do.
So it's a series of factors. The soldiers on the ground, as well as the technological marvels like the Iron Dome you see behind me, that are responsible for those very impressive 90% interception rates and what's keeping Israel safe from a fusillade of rockets and mortars coming out of the south.
And that report from our Ariel Levin-Waldman. Still with me in studio, Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Ruvain Ben Shalom, an associate at the International Institute for Counter-Terrorism. And when one looks at the numbers and looks at the footage of the interceptions over the skies of Israel, one realizes how many more lives would have been lost without the Iron Dome. The death toll could be in the thousands. Talk to us about how it changes the game, so to speak, having this missile defense system in Israel's hands.
Well, first, I think it's a mistake to think that Israel has this one secret weapon. When you think about it, the entire Israeli doctrine is having these iron domes all around us. For instance, terrorism, simple terrorism that is thwarted day in and day out. Once a year, we hear that about 500 terror attacks were thwarted. That means we don't know that they were supposed to happen, and they were stopped before they happened. In a way, we have layer after layer after layer of intelligence and technological systems, cyber capabilities. And I like what was said in this, what we just heard, because it's not only technology, it's not only the interceptor itself that is genius, by the way. To hit a bullet with a bullet is pure genius. But imagine that you just have a certain amount of batteries. Where do you put them? The assessment of where to put them relies on intelligence and decision-making. Even the whole idea behind the Iron Dome, the fact that many years ago someone had to assess the situation, with a limited budget, decide what to go for, and then go for this. Just imagine that Minister Amir Peretz, the one that approved it at the time, he would have decided, you know what, I don't like the Iron Dome, let's take something else. Our whole strategic posture would be different. The only interesting question, it's almost like a theoretical moral question, is that we are so much criticized in the world for the low death toll in Israel compared to the large death toll, or relatively large death toll in Gaza. So sometimes one may think, so what do you want us to do? Turn off the Iron Dome? Like, should we apologize for protecting ourselves so much? And one more point, remember, 90% is just 90%. That means 10% get through. So 3,500 rockets, 10% of that is many rockets. The situation now in Israel, I would say it's not that it's, if it was 100%, by the way, even then this was arguable. Right now, rockets raining down, huge barrages, not all are intercepted, so I'm very happy that it exists. Still, it gives our government some leeway, some time to think and decide, but not enough.
And certainly it still is a very terrifying experience to be running to a shelter with the elderly, with children, in some cases like we saw in the south, just 15 seconds to get to shelter, not knowing, of course, if that Iron Dome is going to intercept the rocket overhead. We alluded earlier to another point, and that was the issue of morals and ethics in an escalation like this. Very contentious, very close to home for so many people. The concept of civilians, no decent thinking person the world over would ever want any civilian, innocent person to be hurt or even to be scared in a situation like this. Israel is claiming it clears buildings before it goes into Gaza, sends messages to make sure that civilians or even the media are out of certain premises before they target it. Talk us through the process in terms of trying to make sure that civilians are safe when a strike like the one we're going to see in the coming hours is going to play out in Gaza.
Well, remember that the IDF today, we're not on an island without partners. We work with partners, friends, and allies worldwide. Of course, our American friends, British and others, learning from each other, learning from our mistakes, learning from our successes. And we talk about urban warfare. We fight as other Western armies fight today.